Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV and we're here in my Chevy Volt. I've had this car for the last 3 years. My lease is almost up. So I figured I would do a first-person perspective recording of what it's like to drive one. And we did this with the Tesla before. I know a lot of folks were frustrated that I went through all of the vehicle controls first before we took the drive. So what we're going to do this time is take the drive and then go through all the other stuff when we get back in a little bit. So I'm going to shift the car into gear here. And we're just going to back up in my driveway. It is really cold out right now. So you'll notice on the display here, I'm only getting about 25 miles of range. That is due in part to two things. One is the fact that the battery is cold and it's cold outside and you'll lose charge, but also because I have the climate system on. Now you could make the car cooler if you wanted to and do better, but my personal opinion is I'd rather be warm than cold lately, so I take a little range hit that way. But it's very quiet, as you can hear. Even though I have a pretty directional microphone, the car makes almost zero noise when you're driving in electric mode. The big thing that it'll pick up is the sound of the tires on the road as you drive, so it's a really quiet car. One thing that really gets me though is that the field of vision's a little blocked. This pillar here, while it certainly will keep me safe in a rollover or something, becomes a bit of a blind spot, especially when you're taking kind of these left-hand curves like this, because you really can't see what's coming at you. So I'm often kind of just bobbing my head a little bit to get a feel for what I'm missing when I'm coming around a corner. And where I live, I have a lot of twisty turns and everything, so you have to be really careful. One other note here, as I just hit a little patch of ice, is that you don't get a lot of feedback on the anti-lock brakes. So that's one area where I'm a little concerned about, just because I like to feel that brake pedal pushing against me, because I have a better feel for the fact that the car is trying to stop on a slippery surface. So that was, one little area that I didn't like too much about the car. But there isn't much to dislike. I think it's a really well-built car. GM put a lot of engineering into this vehicle, mainly because they were kind of at the time betting the company on this kind of innovation. So it really came perfectly. Didn't really have any problems with it over the course of the 3 years. It's a real pleasure to drive it. It's got a nice sporty feel to it. What's interesting is they kind of take a more cautious approach to energy conservation in the car, where the Tesla will give you as much power as you want. With this car, it puts it into a kind of an economy mode by default. So when you first step on the gas, you don't feel that torque like you do in the Tesla. It has, it feels kind of reserved. It really kind of, holds you back a little bit. So there's a mode here, there's a drive mode button. If you push it twice, it'll put it into sport mode, as you can see down there, and you immediately feel a jolt, and it actually gives you a good jolt of torque when you put it into that mode. So a lot of people that get in the car with me, I usually pop that mode in and give them a little jolt so they can get a feel for what that electric motor torque feels like, because you really don't get that torque until you put it in that mode. But generally I drive it around in normal, just because a lot of the driving I do is around these parts here where it's really just back roads and slow going, so you don't really need a lot of power, because I'm not doing a lot of highway merging or anything like that. Like I said, the car feels great. It's got a nice sporty feel to it. It's very tight steering. It feels a lot like a sports car. Very quiet, as you can't hear. It really goes along very nicely. When the battery is drained, it will switch over to gas mode, and that is a seamless process. In fact, the car is always in electric mode, except the gas engine is a generator. And there's one weird exception to that, but generally it is always running as an electric vehicle, with the gas just basically keeping the battery at a certain level. So when the engine does kick on, it doesn't jolt, it doesn't do anything. You just see this little gauge here shift over from battery to gas, and you keep going, and you get about 40 miles per gallon, which is really good for a car, any car really, and this one is for a gas car, especially a non-diesel, and this does pretty well with that. So that's kind of how that operates there. Beyond that, we're going to take a little spin. I'm going to go to where I'm going, and then we're going to take a look at all of the controls of the vehicle so you can get a feel for that. But as you can see, it's a nice, quiet ride, and I've really enjoyed driving this car over the last 3 years. Before we do take a look at the dashboard and the electronics, this car has been the real deal. It's really, there's no compromises. You don't have to worry about range anxiety or anything like that. If you can find a gas station, it will keep going. And the important thing to note, and the reason why I'm doing this review now, is that all of these cars, or at least the first batch of these cars, are all coming off lease. We're at the end of that first 3-year period, and the resale value is very low. It's about, I think you could probably get into one for under $25,000. And I don't know if they offer the tax credits or not. I think they might if you're in the United States. So if you're thinking about an electric car and the Tesla is not in the price range, you should really look at a used Volt, because they're going to be coming in with low mileage. The wear and tear, especially if the driver wasn't doing a lot of extended range driving. I don't, like I said, I use 200 gallons in the whole course of my ownership of the vehicle. I think you've got yourself a good deal with a car that's going to save you a lot of money on gas, especially if you're getting in the door at 25 or less. You're almost half of what this car costs new. The new ones are a little bit less expensive now, but they're still higher cost, obviously, than a used one, and I think you're going to get a lot of great use out of it. So if you see one and you're interested in an electric car, I think you should really look at a used Volt. I think it's a good value. So we're going to I'm going to continue driving on here, and when we get back, we're going to take a look at all the electronics. Turn the car on. It's beeping at me because I am plugged in right now, so it's not going to let me put the car in gear because it doesn't want you driving off with your plug. So kind of a safety feature there. But this is the main display, and you can see right now we're charging, and we're charging off my wall outlet. So it's going to be a little slow going here, but I've got 12 miles of battery left, and I have 145 miles of gas remaining, so I have a total of 157. The nice thing with the Volt is that if you run low on electricity, you just put more gas in and you can keep going. So that's pretty helpful. Down here, you've got a little dial here, and you can switch around to some things. My tire pressure is low. I know I got to get some air in these tires. But you also have a few other things here. You have 2 trip odometers, so you can kind of set different benchmarks for yourself. And I have, on this one, I just kind of haven't reset it since I got the car, and I've only used like 200 gallons of gas over the course of 3 years and almost 31,000 miles. So that's pretty cool. Over here is our little energy meter, and what they do is they try to get you to drive the car the most efficient way, and that involves trying to keep this little ball in the middle. And I'm just going to jump in a clip from an old video I shot of the car when I first got it, just to show you how this works. So basically, if you accelerate too hard, that little ball is going to move up to the top here, and you don't want that. And likewise, if you brake too hard, it'll do the same thing, because this car has regenerative braking on board. So what you want to do is if you're not in low gear, and I usually drive in low gear because what that does, it's not really a low gear like you would have on an automatic transmission. What it does is basically start regenerating the forward momentum of the vehicle back into the battery when you take your foot off the gas. So when I take my foot off the gas, it starts slowing down. It's almost like I'm braking, and that's actually a more efficient way to stop. When the car is in normal drive mode, it will still do that. It kind of looks at how you're braking with the brake pedal to determine how much regen or actual physical braking to do. But I kind of like having control of the regenerative braking, so I usually drive it in low gear. There's a bit of a debate as to whether or not that actually gets you any extra range, but it's worked well for me. In the summertime, I easily get 40 miles in this car every time I go somewhere. So that's that. You have Bluetooth on board. It doesn't work so great with the iPhone. It takes it like 2 or 3 minutes to pair up with my phone, but it does work. The 2011 model, which this one is, doesn't have the Bluetooth audio, but the newer models do. So if you get a 2011, you'll need to plug it in. There is an iPhone, analog connector you can use, so you can still do that there. And you have the standard cruise control and all that good stuff. Over here is your multifunction display, and what we can do is hit this little leaf here, and that'll give us all of our different energy modes, so you can kind of get a quick view as to where you're at. So this is kind of like the Prius, where you can see as you're driving, you can see whether the energy is going in or out of your battery, which is always cool to see. This tells us how much time it's going to take to charge the vehicle up. And I made a decision not to buy the 240 volt charger. It was like $1,200 when I got the car, and it just wasn't worth it. And because I'm not home long enough during the day to really take advantage of that extra speed you'll get charging at 240 versus 120 volts. So I just plug it into my wall. You'll see what that looks like in a minute, and it's fine. It takes about 8 hours to get a full charge back into the car, but like I said, most of the time it doesn't really impact me that much, so it's not necessary. Here is the energy info, and what it does is it gives you a rating on your driving style. So if you're driving too aggressively, it's going to give you a bad grade. So it kind of gives you an idea as to how you can improve your driving to get better range out of it. You can see here too that the climate setting is taking a toll here. 100% meaning that it's impacting our energy usage, because that climate system, as I mentioned before, does knock off your range more so in the winter than in the summer. I found that if you're in the climate settings here and you put it on eco for air conditioning, it's really not bad. In fact, I'm easily getting 40 miles in the summer even with the air conditioning on. So the air conditioning is a lot more efficient than the heat is. But So you have eco and you have comfort. Comfort really gets you warm, but the overall, I have to say, the climate system on this particular model year isn't that great. I think they improved it in the later models. It also has heated seats because I have the leather, so that is quite helpful. So what I did find kind of neat is that all of the touchscreen display functions are kind of mirrored down here, so I don't have to navigate through stuff. If I want to get to the radio bands, I can just I can just hit that and get right over to it, as I can switch to my auxiliary inputs. You know, my back and forth on there. There is some phone controls here too, so you can control the phone. I think it's got some kind of DVR capability, or audio recording capability, but I've never really done much with that. And it has a built-in navigation system, so that was standard equipment. So I know a lot of you have that on your phones now, but it's there if you want to use it. There is a CD player, and it plays DVD movies too when the car is stopped, but I've never really gotten into that. Beyond that, it's pretty much like any other car. You know, you've got your emergency brake here. This is an electric emergency brake, so it's a little bit different than you might have experienced in other cars. The nice thing is that because it's computer controlled, you can not worry about driving off with it. If you start to put the car in gear and move, it'll actually automatically retract it, which is pretty helpful there. So we're just going to retract it there. You hear it moving in the background there. And then you've got a little green light at the top when you're charging. So it's kind of a neat way to, it almost looks like your cell phone or your computer when it's plugged in. So that's the basic rundown of the controls. It's it's pretty basic stuff. One thing I didn't mention was just that it gives you a rundown of your energy usage. So you can see today so far we've driven about 18 miles on electricity, and we haven't used any gas. So we did a little spin around the area for a few errands, and it seems to work pretty well. It also gives me a lifetime update on where I'm at. What's cool is that while you're driving, if you are using gas, it'll also measure your gas consumption. Newer models now have some more detail on the electric consumption as well. So that is it for the interior, and we'll take another look outside the car and take a look at the trunk space and some other things as well. Okay, here we are outside of the vehicle in the garage. Right now it's plugged in. I have it plugged into my wall outlet, and basically I'm charging off the wall because it takes 8 hours to charge it fully, but most of the time I'm not home long enough even to get the benefit of the faster 240 volt charger, which costs a lot of money. So right out of the box, you just get that 110, plug it into your outlet, and you'll be fine. It's a really attractive car. It's a hatchback. So as you can see here, we'll pop the hood. It's filthy here because we are in Connecticut and we have a lot of snow and ice and whatnot, but this gives you a sense of how the car looks. It's pretty much open in the back, mainly because the battery goes down the middle there. So it kind of goes down there and kind of tees off into both ends. So it kind of limits, putting some dividers in the trunk and whatnot. But it's a pretty attractive car. It's got a decent amount of space. I mean, it's on par with other hatchbacks. I think one of the complaints that people have had about the car is that it is small. It's not a car that can fit a family comfortably. And when I have my daughter in the car with the car seat, it doesn't give us a lot of room in the front afterward. But overall, pretty nice looking car. So we'll take a little spin around here. The plug for the electric is in the front. The gas is in the back on the other side. And what's neat is that because it doesn't use gas all that often, when you open the gas tank, it actually depressurizes it. It's a stainless steel tank that's designed to keep the fuel fresh over longer periods of time. The car will, at times, go through its engine just to kind of bleed off the gas. And I think if you go like a year without using the gas at all, it'll actually burn the whole tank just to keep things clear. So that is the exterior of the car. We're going to pop the hood and take a look inside there. All right, well, you can see how clean this car stays, not using that gas engine all that often. So there it is. That's the gas generator. There is the inverter for the electric motor. So the actual motor that drives the car is underneath it. But as you can see, there's not a lot of room here at all, mainly because you're essentially having two drivetrains, or at least two engines in there. And then you can see all the high voltage cables that run all of the electricity from the battery that was in the back there over to the electric motor. So all in all, it's a great car. I've really enjoyed this. I think if you have the opportunity to buy one of these used, that's something you should think about. These are cars that were going to last a long time, especially if the more moving parts, which would be the gas engine, aren't used all that often. So definitely go out and take a test drive, because I think you might like the freedom of having an electric car. This is Lon.TV, and thanks for watching.